August 4. Time for some daily game development. we had our meetup yesterday. Um, it's just really interesting, um, situating my own preferences when we meet with people and I play test their games. It's been like really, I think it's really important. I think it's a really good experience to figure out what I can do, how I can communicate, or what kind of feedback I can give when I'm not the when I'm not the primary audience for a game. Really interesting puzzle, and that comes up like with pretty much every time I'm playtesting. So it shows up in a couple of different categories. One is one is if the designer is really interested in like multiple systems and complex interactions in those systems. So I realize I'm just not really that kind of thinker. Um, and that it's I guess it's not always comfortable to admit that. I mean, like yesterday we played my friend Seth's game, Yes Your Grace. My first time playing it. I've seen it on the table a few times. I know he teaches it very well. He's been working on it for a long time. Um, and anyway, I know he has this issue with like having a million cards in the game. That's not quite true. I think he said 190 something, and I forget what the total number of cards in the game is. But one thing is, of course, that's going to be expensive to publish. You know, some huge amount of cards. Like cards are heavy, and that's especially true if most of the cards are not used most of the time. So he wants it to be like a 10-player game. And it definitely like there's definitely a possibility, like for example with some games, one is Catan that comes to mind, or I think Wingspan is another one. You can actually purchase what you need to expand to higher player counts. So that's like in a separate box. And I think Seth even mentioned something like that yesterday, where maybe there's a base set that's like for 5 to 7 players or something like that. And so that'd be cheaper to manufacture, um, and you're more likely to be playing with that number anyway. You're not likely to get a group of 10 people to play, and that's partly because it's hard to get a group of 10 people to do anything. Um, but a game in this weight class. So this was my first exposure to the game itself at the table, um, and I think the ideas are generally strong. I'm not a huge social deduction fan, partly because it's really hard for me to read people like that, and um, so then it kind of, yeah, I'm not great at deducing through people's behavior, like where they align, because I just assume, well, maybe they're just amazing at acting. So I don't know what this means. Also, partly because I tend to be fairly chaotic in those games, or like, I mean, I can sell pretty well that I'm, just kind of ignorant of how the game works, and uh, I can kind of hide in a few different ways when I'm playing. If I'm one of the bad guys in those games, and so I just assume, well, maybe most people are like good at this stuff. So I can't tell anyway what where somebody's loyalties lie. So um anyway, so we played through a couple of rounds. There was great drama in the game. I actually really had a nice time. Like I had a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of room for role playing in the game, or just like really funny, fun surprises, and just in general, I think it draws out drama. People acting in character, people there's like a whole bunch of possible backstabbing. There's like layers to people's deceit. Like it's a cool game. In my view, there is too much going on in general, and that also the stuff that's the too much going on also adds cards to the game. So in my view, it'd be nice to cut it down, simplify it, concentrate it, and that was the idea in my thinking. Like at one point, I brought the analogy to the table. This was during feedback, that this game is more like a novel, whereas I'm more interested in poems. I think that's true. Like I don't get the sense that I'm great at like processing lots of information and lots of change in the game state, or lots of potential in the game state, depending on, you know, where people are, how people are playing, and whatever. I just don't typically feel like I have that kind of processing power, especially in a first play. You know, maybe if I played the game 100 times, I would start to develop some rules of thumb and stuff like that. But in my view, there were things that it was just kind of too granular. There's too much, you know, like this beats, there's a rock, paper, scissors mechanic that at some point kind of, we discussed it, kind of breaks down or isn't that meaningful. And anyway, it's just too much to process for me, with lots of cards, with lots of little hot spots around the table that I'm meant to engage with, but I don't really know what's happening. Anyway, so I think experience would absolutely change that. But at the same time, my typical orientation is to pursue elegance. And sometimes that might mean something specific to me that it doesn't mean to somebody else. So when they have the things kind of interacting in their mind, the things developing and meshing and integrating in their minds, like it's still beautiful, even though for me it's complicated. As in complicated for the sake of being complicated. Having another extra system for the sake of having an extra system. Not that it's necessary, not that it's essential. So that's my view of it. Right? For me, I'm so used to, and I'm teaching writing classes these days, and I've done a lot of writing for a long time and coached writing for a long time. And often people can say what they mean in fewer words. People can concentrate, can condense, can compact, can become more concise in their delivery. And this is often, not always, but often more poignant, more digestible, closer to the thing they wanted to communicate. Right? That because we wander when we write, or we maybe this is something I observe almost in every paper I look at when it comes to people with less experience. A lot of times, and we're talking about college essays at the moment, a lot of times somebody will start with a claim at the top of the paper. This is the thesis. This is what, this is the structure that they're used to. They're used to, I know I need to make a claim. Well, then they go through another 700 words, maybe 1,000 words. And by the end of the paper, it becomes clear to me that now they know what they're talking about. But by this time, their claim has actually shifted. It's changed. The focus of the paper's actually changed. In other words, what the person did was think as they wrote, and then finally, at the bottom of the paper, that's after they've kind of reorganized their thinking. Maybe they've moved bits around, but they've been thinking out loud. And in what I mean is they've been like thinking and typing, and that's thinking out loud. Externalizing your thoughts. So they've been doing this. They've been in the process. And my claim to them is always, you think as you write. You don't think before you write. I mean, this is what I observe. So they start with a particular claim. They spend 1,200 words attempting to stay focused on that claim, but often they don't. Often their thinking matures, changes, shifts as they write. So that the thing that stands out, the thing that actually makes sense at the end of the paper, is different from where they started. And they often don't go back, they don't circle back to the initial claim and make changes to the initial claim. I see it all the time. In almost, I would say like 75% of the papers that I review with these students. You think as you write. So that's why I think it's so cool and so important to now go back over what you wrote, move, cut. Certainly it's reorganize and condense. That's often I like to encourage students, if if the paper is 1,000 words, 750 words, like go ahead and write. Feel good about writing 1,500 words. I know students, especially in a rush, they feel like, oh, that's way too much. I could never fill 1,500 words. Actually, you can. Academic papers are really formulaic. Super duper formulaic. So a lot of it is fill in the blank. But now once you've written over the expected word count, or the minimum word count now, and they feel good about it. Often those students who do that, who are overproductive, they feel like this is a good thing. That, look, I've done more than was required. Then my encouragement to them is, now revisit your paper and cut back down to the minimum requirement. Cut back down. Guaranteed their thinking is going to be clearer. They're going to be communicating their ideas more efficiently, and I think just generally this achieves a kind of higher quality of writing. Typically, if you overproduce and then you cut back to where you're meant to be. Anyway, so that's almost always my bent. It's to condense, become more concise, become more efficient in how you communicate what it is you're trying to communicate. I find there's a lot of value to that, and that shows up in my game design too. That's exactly what I said. That was the analogy I brought to the table. Like I actually find, so I've tried to write some. I've started some world building, like as if I was starting a novel. So I wrote maybe 2,000 words of this young person showing up to a boarding school, and I felt really good about it. I thought, there's some pretty decent world building here. There's, it's clearly a kind of a different time and place. The technology's different. The dialect is different. And I was really having fun developing this. But now to keep that stamina up for, another 200 pages, that to me is crazy. I cannot imagine paying that much attention, like having that much care over every sentence, every word for another 200 pages. Other people, they find that's cool, like no problem. Where I think I've felt the most satisfied is when I concentrate an idea down into something more like song lyrics or like a poem. I used to write a lot of poems as in my youth. I wrote a lot of poems. And so for me, that's really attractive. It's spending a lot of energy, a lot of processing power on what exactly am I trying to say? How precise? How compact can I make the thing that I'm trying to represent? And this thing that seems really complicated and difficult to express in my mind, how can I concentrate that down into a single image, a single idea, a word? How can I do that? That to me is exciting. That's a puzzle. So I find it's hard for me to be effusive. It's hard for me to be like overly expressive. And anyway, that shows up in my game design. So when I said this game feels like it's trying to be a novel, whereas I'm more interested in poetry, that's what I'm talking about, right? That's my orientation, my intuition when it comes to game design is to simplify, find the tension, find those moments of kind of pure tension or pure internal conflict, pure fun. That's what I'm looking for. I don't know that I'm great at finding it, but it's elegance that I'm after. And partly that's because I believe that is something like often a game design goal in a lot of the games that I play or enjoy. It's partly because I'm not super attracted to like really heavy stuff. That could be it. Like it's hard for me to learn, it's hard for me to enjoy, so I'm just not I don't buy into it. But there are so many cool games. Like when I started really playing a lot more games, almost like in a research sense. Like I just knew I needed exposure. So when I really got after that, and I was exposed to some small games that pack so much power. Like the tension is insane, or like the the expectation of efficiency, like doing very much with very little. It when I started seeing that in different in smaller games, I didn't know that was possible. These are the poems of games, and so what I think I'm 3 years of design in. I just actually looked it up on my phone, partly because I'm interacting with some folks who I would really like to make some recommendations for. I think they've got some cool ideas, but in my view, the game is not where it should be. It's my perception of the game's development is very very different from theirs, and they've sunk a lot of time into it, a decent amount of I think cost in various different ways. Uh, but I don't think the game has progressed to the point that it's like ready. The gameplay is ready, and it's partly based on the kind of feedback the game got. I was there at the table. I gave some of that feedback, but others also gave the feedback, which was, there don't seem to be very many interesting choices here. That was the feedback, and I've gotten that feedback for some of my designs. So again, I'm 3 years in. I've got about 20 working prototypes or games in various stages of development. Some still very conceptual, some are close to pitching, and a couple are published. One by me, so it kind of doesn't count, but one by a friend of mine, and that game is actually selling. It's not amazing. Not everybody's buying it and going crazy over it. In fact, I've seen some pretty bad reviews, and in fact, a negative review by like a really well respected, really well respected reviewer. Unfortunately, so I know it's not amazing, but there are. I can defend the ideas in the game. It doesn't mean I wouldn't change anything or try something different now. The point is, that's a kind of library of experience that now I'm enjoying applying to designs I'm working on, which still get negative feedback. It's not like I have just constant silver bullets or whatever. Like I anyway, partly what I'm thinking why I'm expressing this is not only is there time with experience in design, but also and this is why I have this open right now. Also, I've had time to play lots of games, and I expressed this a little bit yesterday. There's a point at which playing games is not really going to help you that much. There's a time when there are diminishing returns on playing more games. That's partly when you get the sense that games are all like games, especially within categories, have kind of like they've all kind of learned from each other. There's some iterations, but in general, like you kind of see you see similar ideas just repackaged, or there's a little twist, and that's kind of all you need sometimes is a little twist for a game to take off and do well, to solve a certain type of problem that games before it they just never, I don't know, they didn't have the insight that this current game that's solving the problems is really like hot and whatever that this current game solved. So I've seen a little bit of like essential listing happening. This happened on Board Game Design Lab. One designer who's spent a lot of time in the industry came up with his 13 essential games that all designers should play. And then another designer did the same thing. So this is not what I'm doing. This is not like, hey, these are games I think every designer ought to play. But as I was thinking about the game that this particular group brought and got feedback for, I thought, wow, I don't think they've played very many games, and I think that's actually true. They have played a few, but not very many. And I'm thinking, there are so many small, simple games that present problems and solve problems in really interesting ways that I really wish that these folks had exposure to. So that's kind of how that's how I've been thinking as I've been developing this list. And I'm not going to go through it, but the point is to say that there really is, like, there's so much value in just playing games, and it's an exposure thing. It's to see that designers have found really cool, really elegant, um, discrete ways to present people with interesting problems to solve. That's what's happening in these games. That's like kind of the point of a lot of games. It's the designer saying, hey, I've got this puzzle for you. I think you'll really like it. I think you'll like solving it in your own way with other people at the table. I think you'll really like it. And that's really cool. So now that I view games, when I play them, I view them from a designer's point of view. I think almost in terms of like I think, like, especially if there's any kind of like rules ambiguity or something, it's almost like I think the designer intended me to feel this way. I think the designer wanted to give me this particular problem to solve. And so that's a really fun thing, like to put a person's mind behind the thing that you're interacting with. I think is a really, really cool thing. A lot of people, I think, especially before, my understanding is before Catan, before the late 90s, early 2000s, it was uncommon for designers to have their names associated with games. So, like, you're not going to find the name of the designer on most games, on most game boxes before the 2000s. I don't know why. I think maybe is it because games and toys were associated, and a toy is just who cares who made this thing? It's just a toy. I don't know. I don't really understand it. But the point is, this has changed to the point that, like, now I think it's really an expectation. Certainly in modern hobby board gaming, you're absolutely going to see the designer's name, or there might be a design, a studio where it's not obvious that one person was behind the game. You can see that, but what's really cool now is you get to, as a player, you get to say, I really like how this person thinks. I really like how this designer, I like the puzzles that this designer presents to me. I want to go play more of their games. So that's a really cool thing, to kind of humanize the games in the sense that they're not just lifeless things on the table. They came from somewhere. They came from somebody's mind, or the mind of some group of people. Well, even further down that path is they came from the mind of somebody who then presented these ideas to groups of people, tested and refined this idea, the final product. So it's just a really cool thing now. I think it's just a fundamental shift. So anyway, wow, what have I been talking about? Mostly it's that there are certain types of experience that I think are really, really valuable for people early in the design process. These things apply to any creative project, endeavor. Some of it is just doing it. Some of it you have to go experience the thing itself, treating the thing as some variety of skills that you can absorb through doing. And here, in this case, it's go play games. Well, certainly design games and play games. So if it was something like ceramics, like go sit at a pottery wheel and create a thing. But also maybe take have a look at some of the designs that you might find. I don't know. I'm sure there's lots of ways to like get exposure to ways that people have solved problems in pottery. I don't know how to do that. Not yet. So yeah, just do it. Get some experience doing it, but also take a class, do some research, right? Do some reading, watch some videos. Like there's so many ways to learn about the process. So there's the doing, and then there's also just like the actual study of the thing. Um, it's all really valuable. For us, it's games. Isn't that cool? Like that's just an awesome. Like we get to study games, to enjoy making games. It's like go play for a while, see how this designer figured this thing out. So that's what I've been working on. Is if that group is open to it, I'm gonna send them a list of games that I think would be enlightening, would be inspiring. Just because these are like there's so many brilliant ideas packed in small packages. It's really really cool. So I love doing this. I love thinking about this stuff. Anyway, so many great little games. And there's still a lot that I have. I mean, hundreds and hundreds that I haven't played that I wish I had. So, anyway, from there, I'd like to jump into having a look at South Shore Vibes. This is based on yesterday's playtest. A few things came to the surface that I hadn't really thought about with some of the changes I made going into the playtest. So, if you missed yesterday's stream, some of the changes. Some of the changes. One, this exhausted dice pool. Previously, the exhausted dice were only available between waves. So what's happening is, you have a pool of dice. So do all of your friends. When you go out to the wave, you leave 2 dice behind in this exhausted dice area. Well, all that's representing is you're paddling out and you're spending energy to get to the wave. And it's work, right? So you leave some dice behind. And what that does is it weakens your pool. It lowers the probability that you're going to get what you need in order to surf the wave with any skill or to even complete the wave. So that's what it's representing thematically, is it's tiring to get out and catch waves. But mechanically what it does is it just weakens your dice pool and makes it less likely for you to be especially successful surfing the wave. And all surfing the wave is it means starting at the top tier of the wave for that round. Like here is round 1, so you'd be taking your dice, placing a die somewhere up here on tier 1, and then moving down the tiers until you land above one of the numbers associated with victory points right here in the green boxes. So anyway, what I've been doing is that the idea up until now was that an exhausted die is exhausted until it's like between waves. So if it's possible to refresh a die, that's like to get a second wind or something like that. You can spend one of the resources in the game to get one of those dice back. So that's like, you're likely to be able to surf longer or surf more successfully. So what I tried yesterday was to allow for players to buy back dice from the exhausted dice pool. That was one of the big changes. Another one was allowing players to share a space. And what that means is so far as players have been placing dice, they have to react to each other and move around each other. You can imagine everybody's on a wave together and they're all kind of surfing around and cutting in and out, and so that's what I'm representing here on the wave. Well, I added the idea that maybe you could share a space, and the way to do that would be by spending same resources as the one before, but spending that resource to then like stack the die that you were going to play, stack the die on top of dice somebody else already placed on that tier. So that was another experiment. This one I actually forgot to apply, the neutral dice thing. I totally forgot that I was going to do that. It's partly because I didn't really set up beforehand. I didn't have the right number of dice prepped, so I just kind of had the same number of dice that I had before, the same number of neutral dice. So how did it go? I don't know that it was fun. I think I liked seeing the players try for both skills and points from the bottom tier of the wave. So skills are these patterns that players can create with the movement down the wave. So it's just these purple squares. So so for instance, to get this 3, to get 4 points, you could do a pattern that's three dice. So it'd be like this 7, and then down and 2 to the right, then this 7, and then this 7. So that's how you could get 4 points. It's if you made that pattern on the wave somewhere. And it could be anywhere on the wave, but as long as you just matched those patterns. So I really liked seeing the players think about the patterns, and also like the fact that their dice pool is limited, and so it just turned out, I think it was actually pretty nice. So I think the exhausted die created some problems that I think is probably worth removing this idea. One example is, it's really a problem if a player or it would be hard to catch a player who gets to take another wave by themselves, because that's the thing. You can all paddle out, you all have to surf at least one wave, and you'll definitely have enough dice to surf one wave. It doesn't mean that you'll actually be able to finish the wave, but you'll all be out there and catching at least one wave. But then remember, the idea is that you exhaust dice before or kind of as you paddle out thematically. So you finish a wave, and then you have a bunch of dice left. You can actually go do another wave. You can paddle out again, but that requires that you exhaust dice to do that. So every wave weakens the players more and more. Every new wave. So what was really interesting, what I hadn't thought about. So I allowed players to use each other's dice. It's just that you get a big payout if you do that. So if I use my friend's die, because I need that number for whatever reason, maybe in my pool of dice, I didn't get the numbers I needed to match the values of the dice in the as I'm surfing down through the tiers. So you can actually use other players' dice, but you kind of have to pay them for doing that. They're going to get victory points for doing that. So that was cool. But I even allowed a player to unexhaust another player's die. So what that means is it kind of brought it back into the game, and it gave him the advantage in the sense that he had enough dice to surf again. So I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought, if you can just unexhaust dice whenever you want, well, what happens to that unexhausted die? What happens to that refreshed die? Does the player who owns that die, do they get it back for the next wave or not? Anyway, it was something I hadn't thought of. So it created some weird imbalance that I didn't really like. So I'm thinking I'm actually going to write some notes here. Remove after playtest at 8.3. Remove refresh any die at any time. This created a problematic imbalance. giving the player whose die you refreshed an advantage and greater likelihood, let me put it this way, of surfing another wave that round. That's too strong of an advantage. Okay, so that's the first thing. I think I'll go ahead and just remove this. Refresh before or between waves. And this is also it also seems important to think this way because I don't want it to be very likely that players can take another wave when the majority of players cannot. That a player can go on another wave. And that's because I don't think I really want to just watch somebody take their wave. Right? So it'd be nice to design a system that generally has people like taking the same number of waves. So yeah. So I think getting a die back is just way too powerful. It doesn't mean that, you know, it could be that handling refreshing I could do it in a different way. But I think what I really needed to do is respect the rule that I that I brainstormed from last playtest, which was that earlier rounds need to have more neutral dice, and I just didn't do that. So in the case of round one, yesterday, I did the same thing I did before, which is have five neutral dice. Whereas I thought what I should do is the number of players plus 4, which would be 8 neutral dice, and that just kind of opens things up a little bit, relaxes the probabilities a little bit. So you should actually, hopefully, you should be able to finish the wave in that sense. At least one wave. So, okay, so that's one change I'm gonna apply pretty easily. Sharing a space came up as a problem, but only because it felt wrong. It felt wrong to be able to stack on top of this space and just pay a little shaka cost. That's what this resource is. These pink hexagons. This is a shaka. You pay shakas. So that felt wrong. Because the person had done a lot of work to like surf a particular line so that they could end with the most points. And it seems a little bit weird that pretty much everybody could just end like that. Like, how many players could end like that? And if a player stacks on top of 2 other players, then who gets the shakas? Who gets that resource? So it just kind of created a whole bunch more rules that I feel are probably unnecessary. Yeah, it created something unnecessary. So at the same time, it also relieved, well, yesterday I saw that, and I anticipated this. I think we kind of, I saw this before when I play tested this, I think maybe 2 summers ago. Or it might have been last summer. Hey? No, it was 2 summers ago. I knew there was a chance that the way that the dice get placed could basically freeze somebody out from getting good points. So I can't really show it here exactly. Oh, maybe I can actually. Let me just do it like this. So let's say here's player 1, player 2, player 3, and player 4. So the current mechanic is that whoever's on the left side of the wave, they get to place next on the they get to place on the tier, the next tier below. So this person places here. The next person, this one, places here. This person places here. Well, this person has no choice but to continue going further left. I mean, if we're thinking about being actually on the wave, like facing the shore. What can happen is that this player only has a 5, so then this player plays that 5, and this one maybe covers this 5. Well, then this person, yeah, it's like if they all stay kind of grouped up, there's no change in turn order. There's no way to kind of change your fate at this point. So it's just they all move down parallel, and that there's no decision making there. It's just, do I have the right dice to keep somebody from cutting in? So that's why sharing the space actually became interesting and maybe important. It's so that a player could kind of angle in. I don't know. It's kind of it's a fundamental problem that these players could just freeze somebody out. I don't like that, but I also think that sharing space introduces a whole bunch more problems. So this is not one way to address this issue is if the person from on the right, but on the left side of the wave, like the person right here, if they went first. But then I think you have another basic problem. It's that this person is also heading toward trying to get down here to this 12, which is to end on the 1. And so then this person also wants to do it. And this person definitely wants to do it too. Well, then what does this person do? If we're resolving from, as we're looking at it, from right to left. So when this person just gets completely locked out, they crash. So they would lose 6 points and gain 3 shakas. Well, I feel like that would happen. I know people don't necessarily want to be mean to each other when they play, but I feel like that's a great way to just shut somebody out. So even though I don't think most people would be mean like that, the game allows it and actually incentivizes it, because it just means here's one person less, one person who's moving backwards in their score, so they're not like a threat, right? So I don't know exactly what to do here. The point there was that allowing for sharing spaces, sharing spaces would allow a player to get out of this trap as long as they had shakas. So maybe I should have changed colors. I'll just do it just as an example. Let's do orange. Let's do red and blue. Okay, so this is what it would effectively look like. So blue could then come share the space over here with red, and then what would happen is priority would change. So green would still go, let's say they're doing pretty good. Oh, red, yeah, they're both there. So orange is doing pretty good. But then blue, because blue is on top, blue would get priority, I think, is what would happen. Either way, it kind of doesn't matter. So this player, let's say they're wanting to come down this way. And then red is fine with going like this. So, but this player starts paying shakas. That's the point. So it's pretty costly to do this. But it's still... Well, what would red do? Maybe let's just imagine them doing something like that. So this becomes possible. So it could just be that there could be a rule that you can't share the bottom space, right? You can't share the space on the lowest tier. But maybe if you pay shakas, then you should be able to share space. Especially if you resolved from right to left, I would say it's essential that I'd say it's absolutely essential that you allow for shared spaces. Yeah. The other notable feedback was in just like the layout of the page. Oh, another thing was this skill right here. So I would remove this skill. It seems too easy. So I could just make it another one of these, but longer. Actually, that's probably the right move, isn't it? Because they also, each one has this skill where you have to cut back and spend shakas. So another thing that somebody pointed out, and this is, I don't know how this made sense to me when I did it, but the surf skate. So out of these 3 upgrades, the surf skate gives you extra shakas if you play the surf skating game. Just 2 more. So instead of 7, you would get 9. This wax gives you more flexibility on the wave, so you're not spending as many shakas to like maneuver to get skills. That's with the wax. And then finally, the surfboard allows you to refresh a die for cheaper, for half price. So it usually costs 4 to refresh, and here it costs 2. So you buy these upgrades and then you get those effects, right? Well, somebody pointed out that this nobody should ever take. This is at most the value of 4 shakas. That's at most. Because you play the game, you play the mini games round 1 to get enough money to get an upgrade, and then the next round you can actually use that upgrade. So there's no, like, if you took that upgrade, it wouldn't help you at all. It would just give you 4. It would help a little bit. But this is so much more valuable that you should not take that upgrade. That's a problem. So I've been thinking, what can I do to buff the surf skate? Well, I just thought of one idea this morning, and that is to, first of all, increase the number of shakas so that maybe you just fill up. Maybe you just get 14. How crazy would that be? Okay, I didn't think of that. But maybe, okay, so maybe you can just fill up. That's one way to do this. So, in other words, you would never need to, oh, the idea I had this morning was add some number of shakas to a successful parking lot surf skate. And then also make surf skating free when it comes to committing a die. What I hadn't thought of is, well, then why not just let the player fill up in shakas for free every round. So clearly, so they would be saving a die each round, and they would have all the shakas they would need to do crazy stuff. So I think this is actually this is kind of crazy, but it could actually work. So how to say this? So two fill for free, maybe? Fill for free. What font should I use? Maybe this one. Make it black. What is that? Oh, it's transparency issue. So fill for free once free at the start of a round. Okay, that is pretty nuts. I think this could actually work. Like, as in, this should be pretty enticing, right? How do I... What's going on? Where did it go? Okay. So this is a little bit interesting. I'm really not going to have time to... Yeah, this makes playing the game irrelevant. Do I want that to be the case? I don't think... No, I still want them to play. So let me go back, actually. Oh, but okay, now I can do this. Play for free. Let me get rid of this right here. Okay, now I can drop this in. All right, play for free. So it adds shakas, and I don't know, maybe make it a little bit more. Let's add 3 here. Okay, and then also play for free. I think that's actually kind of sweet, right? Because it is the value of saving a die. I think the other changes were like kind of layout related. Just to improve legibility. This is pretty busy, and so that was a point taken. So I'll just apply that. You know, I think the idea was just let things breathe a little more. Maybe print some of this stuff on another sheet. Make the player mats, make them one full sheet rather than splitting them like this. Adding adding a track to, especially if I relocate some of this stuff, adding a track, just a VP track on the outside would be nice. That would actually that would make the player mat breathe more anyway, so that could be useful. Okay, in my last 5 minutes, game design research for ADRA, was this it? I think so, right? I thought I had. There's another one. Yeah, so it's this one actually. So this is for the presentation. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna think through this stuff, probably rewrite some of it. I want to make it into a really simple Python Python PowerPoint and Python created PowerPoint, and then yeah, try to think it through, talk it through in preparation for the meeting tomorrow. I never do. I didn't expect to spend so much time on the idea of like, editing and elegance, that kind of thing. But I'm also pretty tired. I woke up again. I slept around 11, and then I woke up at 3:30 or 4. So I don't know if that's the roosters. There's a rooster out there, or just like, I don't know. Still, yeah, figuring out what sleep is going to be like since I've really tried to stick with this different schedule. Yeah, so pretty excited for the meeting tomorrow. I think the meeting is at 9, so I wonder if I should wait to stream until after. I think that could be kind of cool. Yeah. It is really interesting. Yeah, I always notice how Twitch just always has one viewer, and I kind of don't believe it. I should look this up just to see. Anyway, I think that's about it. I think I'm close to my hour. So just a review for this meeting content, or this pitch content. I think their budget is really not what they imagined. So I realize that I shouldn't say high stakes, but I think like it's not going to be as easy of a sell as I was hoping. So that's why I'm thinking through a few things. So why table games in particular? Actually, I have this. So yeah, why should ADRA be producing games? This is why. Why specifically table games and modern hobby games? And then my sense was, this I mentioned from the beginning of working on this presentation. My sense is that it's the process for actually making a game is obscure to most people. So it could be that they were expecting that the game, that the process of designing, playtesting, getting all the artwork done and all that stuff would be pretty straightforward, or that it might not involve so many steps. I think that's probably part of it. So I also need, because it's going to be time consuming and somewhat costly, I also feel a need to describe the whole process, but that's within the context of like this being a good idea. This is important. This is something that could change people's lives. That could become, that could become like a family phenomenon. It could be the kind of thing, where kids grow up with this game and they have a nice, they have a positive perception of games and also of ADRA. Anyway, so it's this is actually a fairly complicated process. It's going to take some time and resources, but we've already established that it should be worth it, and of course the costs that go along with it. I think this will move up. I need target audience to be pretty early in the discussion, and also giving some examples of other NGOs, other humanitarian organizations that have games. This seems really useful too, because there are some groups that are doing it, but my sense is, at least with the limited time I've spent on this, I don't think most groups are doing it very well. or they're not really, they don't fit the category of games that I'm describing that I think would be of value to ADRA. So they might either fit more in the realm of like quizzes. Like this doesn't feel like a game because you're not really making choices. You're just trying to get the right answer. I mean, you're not making gameplay choices. Not really. There's that. There's that end of things. Like this is so simple, it's not even a game, or it doesn't even operate like a modern hobby game. Like it's a quiz instead. Or the game is like way too complicated. It's more about simulation, simulating disasters and responses to disasters, which is actually really cool. It could be great if there were some really high quality, well respected games that do represent these things. I think there are some, but they're not really, they're not necessarily produced by the organizations that actually that are actually out there doing the work, right? So you have maybe game designers who are trying to understand these processes and think, oh, that's an interesting theme, let me try that out in a game, you know, fire rescue or something like that. But it's not like they represent a fire department or, you know, some agency that manages fires or something. That's not what they do. So anyway, yeah, looking forward to this meeting tomorrow. I am going to spend some more time on it today. Looking forward to game night tonight. And also, I think in general, we've come to the end of our time together. I'm going to rest a little bit more. Yeah, so that's it for me. I will see you soon.